Welcome to another edition of the J Report. Now, the Holocaust represents the darkest chapter in Jewish, if not world history. Yet, if humanity is ever to learn from that complete breach of civilized norms, societies need to fully comprehend what exactly happened during the Nazi era. To maximize the likelihood that humanity will forever understand the enormity of the tragedy, so never again really means never again, Yad Vashem has been tasked to collect, examine, and publish testimony of the disaster and the heroism it called forth. And on this episode of the J Report, we will speak to a man who is currently leading those efforts, Dr. Haim Gertner, the Director of Archives at Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Museum. Watch. You're watching the J Report. My name is Brad Pomerantz. I'm glad you're with us. This interview will be very enlightening. Lots of pertinent and relevant information about the Holocaust because we are speaking with Dr. Haim Gertner. He is with Yad Vashem. He acts as their director of the Archives Division, has done so for over a decade. Sir, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Before we talk about your work specifically, what exactly is Yad Vashem?
Yad Vashem in Jerusalem is the World Holocaust Remembrance Center. We do it through four main channels. One is education. The second one is documentation. I'll speak about it later.
Right.
We are leading also research about the Holocaust and commemoration.
I was recently, sir, at Yad Vashem. It was a remarkable day. I was there with my wife and two teenage daughters. We enjoyed it tremendously. Enjoy may be an interesting word, but still we gained a lot of insight and inspiration. Give us a sense of what the Yad Vashem Center is for those that are visiting Jerusalem.
So Yad Vashem actually was established in 46 already, and later on in 53 by the Israeli law, the Yad Vashem law, a few years after the establishment of the State of Israel. But more than 20 years ago, it was re-established again by the management and the staff in order to take in account that in the 21st century we will have to deal differently in Holocaust remembrance. And this is why the whole place was rebuilt, the vision and the place. So we built a new museum that was opened in 2005, which enables millions to get into Yad Vashem. We have around 1 million visitors a year in Yad Vashem. We rebuild the whole archives, the technology. We build the International School for Holocaust Studies as our main branch for educating students and educators all over the world. We build the International Center for Holocaust Research. So all of that was built during the last 20 years and is continuing to be built. It became very clear to us that we have to be prepared to the period where Holocaust survivors will not be with us anymore. And education and new technology and the need to have a good research and a new museum exhibitions will be the most important issue. And this is why we rebuilt Yad Vashem again during the last 20-25 years.
What's remarkable about Yad Vashem, you mentioned 1 million visitors every year. When we were there, the visitors were of any and every nationality. It wasn't just Jews visiting, but I clearly saw tourists of Asian descent there. I saw tourists of African descent there. So it is welcoming folks from around the globe. Is that intentional?
I think it's very interesting because from the one hand you may see all over the world hatred, you can see anti-Semitism, you can see Holocaust denial, but from the other hand, this is what we see in Yad Vashem, there is a growing interest in the question of the Holocaust. It is an unsolved issue. And this is why it is interesting not only Jews, but people from all over the world. It is not only the around 1 million visitors in the place itself, but last year 19 million visitors in our website.
Which we'll talk about, which is your expertise and your specialty. So when we visit the museum, we see the outside the front office, I guess you can say. But there's a back office. And that back office is where all the archival work is being done. In order for us to enjoy the exhibits, someone has to find the pictures, the film, the documents. And that's where your expertise comes in. Before we talk about specifically Yad Vashem, tell us a bit about why you are the perfect guy to be running the director of the Archives Division. You have a long history in this area.
Actually, I'm a historian, I'm an educator, but I didn't work directly with Holocaust issues. I was a historian of the 19th Jewish history.
Yeah, but you're being humble. You're a PhD in modern Jewish history from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. You got a postdoctorate fellowship at Harvard University. I appreciate your humility, but I can understand what you're saying.
Yes, but I will add to that. It's an anecdote, but I think it has a meaning here. I didn't want to work in Yad Vashem in the beginning. I thought it's too sad.
Right.
It was not my main topic during my history lessons. But when I realized that actually today, this story in our collective Jewish history has not only meaning for the past, but also for the future, then as an educator, I decided that this is the place that I have to be.
Right, and when I think about the future, I think about the fact that I, throughout my life, have had the opportunity to meet Holocaust survivors. My daughters, I don't think they've met any yet. And if they're going to, we need to move quickly. My grandchildren will not meet Holocaust survivors. And so when you talk about the future, that's why the work of Yad Vashem clearly is so pivotal.
It is absolutely correct. I mean, when you see a Holocaust survivor who may tell you, I was there, and this is what I, in my own eyes, saw, this is something that can't be replaced. But we have to prepare ourselves for the next generation. And this is why Yad Vashem is doing a lot of things. Part of them are being done in the archives. For example, collecting Holocaust testimonies. First eye testimonies from Holocaust survivors still today. People maybe doesn't know, but Yad Vashem is collecting every year 1,200 testimonies from survivors all over Israel. Almost a 10 every day.
That would be done already. Those testimonies would have been collected, but like
so
you said,
you know there is a notion that 500,000 survivors immigrated to Israel until the 60s. 500,000. Out of them, only 40,000 submitted a testimony over all those years, less than 10%.
So you're still working.
So, yes.
When we come back, I want to talk more about the collection of those testimonies and talk about the archives, what you've been doing to build up the archives, and the importance of easy access to archives. I think it's a key point. We're speaking with Dr. Haim Gertner. He is the director of Yad Vashem's Archive Division. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We'll be right back. Yep, on the other side, we dig into how exactly Yad Vashem developed its archive, which now houses over 200 million pages. Stay close. Welcome back. We are speaking with Dr. Haim Gertner, the Director of Archives at Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Museum. Watch. We're back on the J Report. I'm Brad Pomerantz, speaking with Dr. Haim Gertner. He is the Director of the Archives Division at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. Let's talk about the archives. How did Yad Vashem go about collecting materials in the archives?
Maybe first about the need to collect. You know, the Nazis not only wanted to murder the Jews, to annihilate them, but wanted to erase our ability to know who were they and what happened to them. And this is why Yad Vashem, from day one, from the very beginning, actually during the war, the victims collected during the war under a risk a lot of documents and continue to do so after that.
I remember in the Warsaw Ghetto, the gentleman, Regenblum, is that his name? You know what I'm talking about? He was collecting documents.
Dr. Emanuel Ringelblum, who was a historian, created a secret hidden archive, the Oyneg Shabbos archive in the Warsaw Ghetto, but in many, many other places as well, in Terezin and in many other places. And after the war, the survivors continued to collect documents, and by that established Yad Vashem. So Yad Vashem collected documents from the very beginning with this notion that we have to collect all those pieces of this huge puzzle of black holes in our collective memory. So Yad Vashem collected actually a lot of documents during all the years. And actually, the Yad Vashem archive is the largest archive about the Holocaust, about the fate of Jews all over the world.
So how many items are in the archive, including documents, film, photographs, however you define an item?
So today, the Yad Vashem archives hold something like 204 million pages of documents, 500,000 photos, 130,000 testimonies, oral, written, and video. We have more than 11,000 artwork from the period of the Holocaust. We have more than 30,000 artifacts, etc. So it is the largest collection, but what is much more interesting is that it was tripled during the last decade.
It's remarkable to me, because I would have thought that the period with which you would have collected most of your artifacts, 50s, 60s, maybe the 70s, how is it over the last decade you tripled your input?
We are doing it in two parallel channels. One is to collect originals, and mainly in Israel, but all over the world as well.
Right.
People kept it at home,
Right.
but now when they are growing up and the survivors are much more older, then they feel that they have to bring it into Yad Vashem to keep it for generations to come, and we have the abilities to do so. This is why, for example, Yad Vashem is now building a new facility, doubling.
They have to.
It's a place to hold the treasures of Yad Vashem because we are getting so many items. During the last 7 years, we are leading in Israel a campaign, we call it Gathering the Fragments. Right. We met until now 11,000 people who donated to Yad Vashem no less than 240,000 items and collections that they have at home.
And let me ask you about the fragments, because what's remarkable to me is what may be someone's trash is someone else's treasure. And I understand you have worked with either survivors or descendants of survivors who have what they think is a document, a photograph that doesn't mean anything. But when you and your people get your hands on it, it's gold.
I'll tell you a story.
Please.
9 years ago, I met a lady from Tel Aviv, Ruth Tauber. She donated to Yad Vashem a diary that her late husband, Feibesh Tauber, wrote as an educator in the ghetto in Mogilev Podolsk, today in the Ukraine. He wrote there about the daily life in the ghetto, about 480 orphans that he educated there in Mogilev Podolsk. She gave it to us, we preserved it, it was in a bad condition. We called her back, and then she told us she was very, very excited to see it. And then she told me at the end of the visit, you know, Haim, at home I have something else, which is absolutely not important.
Right.
We brought it, 2 notebooks with memoirs that and short letters that the students, the orphans, wrote to their educator when they received certificates in the middle of the war in 1944 and immigrated to the land of Israel.
Somehow, we don't know how at this point.
We know, it's a known story.
Now we know?
Yes, we know now the story.
Okay.
But a group of few hundreds orphans could escape from Mogilev Podolsk. So they wrote the educator farewell letters. We opened the farewell letters, and we were able to find the people who are living in Israel right now. So one of them, his name was Eliezer Gantverger. This was the name that I remember. We were trying to find, we didn't find Eliezer Gantverger, but we found in our names database, in the central names database of Holocaust victims that we created during the years,
sure.
We found Eliezer Dagan, who commemorated the Gantvergers, the parents. And we realized that it is him. He passed away, but the wife, his wife, saw for the first time something that he wrote as a young kid in Mogilev Podolsk. So something that for one lady was considered as not important, for the other one was a treasure.
A true treasure. When we come back, I want to talk about why it's important to you that we create accessibility for these millions of documents that you have? Some people may say, who cares? Why does the public need them? You'll explain why you think they do. My name is Brad Pomerantz. We'll be right back on the J Report. When we come back, we continue our conversation with Dr. Haim Gertner and focus upon worldwide efforts to cooperate in the chronicling of the Holocaust. We'll be right back. We are back on the J Report with Dr. Haim Gertner, who is giving us the ultimate insider's perspective into the archives of Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust Museum. Welcome back. It's the J Report. I'm Brad Pomerantz, speaking with Haim Gertner. He is the director of the Archives Division at Yad Vashem. You continue to gather documents, but I have to think that Yad Vashem isn't the only place gathering documents about the Holocaust. Throughout Europe, America, Australia, South Africa, Israel, wherever it may be, how do you work with colleagues at other institutions to make sure that kind of everyone's on the same page and everyone has access to every other document that may be somewhere else?
So Yad Vashem is collecting originals, but except of originals, tens of millions of documents are still there in Europe, mainly in Europe, but also in all the rest of the world. In North America as well as in South America and in a lot of other places.
Argentina, sure.
So in order to collect into one place the story, the whole fragmented pieces of this huge puzzle, we are mapping and then scanning, copying all the documents that we may find all over. And for that, we are cooperating with everyone. We are leading actually this mapping process.
And it's called, the organization that is coming together, the European Holocaust Research Infrastructure.
We do it through few tools. One of them is done by Yad Vashem. We signed more than 100 agreements with, during the last decade with leading states and archives all over Europe, mainly now in Central Eastern Europe, where a lot of places were blocked. One of the tools that we are using is this European project. It is called ERI, European Holocaust Research Infrastructure. Yad Vashem was one of the leaders and the initiators of this project. During the last 7-8 years, we are gathering together 27 institutions from almost 15 countries, information about Holocaust collections. And all of that is being, the access to the data about that is online.
So if I went to Yad Vashem to find a document, but that document happens to be sitting in Warsaw, will Yad Vashem have a copy of that document, or at least know that exists, so I can either see it through the Yad Vashem website or be sent to the Warsaw archive?
So first we map. In a lot of places in Eastern Europe, it was blocked for a lot of time. In post-communist places, for example, you can't find in the catalogs the word Jew or Jewish, so you can't locate documents. So you have to send very, very talented groups of researchers to open almost every file and to locate information. Then we copy it. Every year, we bring to Yad Vashem between 5 to 15 million new scans of pages.
I see.
And this is why, during the last decade, we tripled the amount of documents that we have at Yad Vashem.
I think it's fair to say that in certain countries throughout Europe today, there is some concern about blame for the Holocaust. And so certain countries are adopting rules, regulations, laws that make Holocaust blame illegal. There are ultra right-wing movements that are rising up. Is that causing challenges for Yad Vashem in terms of collection?
Yes, I'm calling it the windows of opportunities that Yad Vashem has, because let's take, for example, Eastern Europe. In Eastern Europe, all the post-communist states are building now their new national identity. And it is complicated. The identity is identity which is built on heroes, that part of them were involved in the murder of the Jews. So there is a huge debate there in the places. And we have difficulties to work in the Ukraine, we have difficulties to work in Poland, we have difficulties to work in Hungary. But we are trying to find our ways to do it, although there are issues there, but also in Western Europe.
But let me ask you specifically about Poland. And I ask you about Poland because I think for so many of us, I mean, look, I think it's 80% of all Jews living today descend from Polish, Lithuanian Jews, that kind of swath. And so when you hear about Poland passing laws that may restrict speech about the Holocaust, when you hear about ultra right-wing groups rising up in Lithuania, those become particularly painful for us. And so what can Yad Vashem do?
I think we are speaking about two issues, two channels here. One is political. I mean, if there is a new law, for example, in Poland, which we are afraid will prevent pure research and education, this is something that you have to relate to, you have to warn, you have to work with the Israeli government, with other governments, and with the Polish government to find solutions for this risky and not proper law. And the other way to combat with that is through research and education, as in the Polish case, because, during the Soviet regime, the Poles told themselves a story about their past. It was an uneasy past. And during the last 20 years after the fall of the Iron Curtain, they're still struggling with this past. And the way to struggle with that is by research, pure research, and education. This is what Yad Vashem is doing with Poland all over the years.
But we think about Poland, there were 3.3 million Jews living in Poland. Over 10% of the population in Poland was Jewish. 3 million wiped out, 90% of Polish Jewry, the worst wipeout of the entire Holocaust period. So Polish research is critical. Are we getting what we need from Poland in terms of research?
In Poland, for example, the main obstacle is now legal, but not the legal political issue, but the data protection regulations. And this is, by the way, correct in Western Europe as well. In a lot of places, the restrictions are that only after, let's say, 100 years or 110 years in Austria, you may enter into archives that has personal information on it, unless you may prove that the person was dying, but I can't. I need the documents in order to prove it. So this is why we have to find solutions for that, and this is the main struggle in Poland.
So when we come back, we will get to the question of easy access, because that really is your mantra. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We'll be right back. On the other side, Dr. Gertner explains why uniform access to Holocaust documentation is so critically important. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We continue our conversation with Yad Vashem's Director of Archives, Dr. Haim Gertner, and learn about efforts to bring the retrieval of Holocaust documentation into the 21st century. This is the J Report. I'm Brad Pomerantz, speaking with Dr. Haim Gertner. He is the Director of Archives at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. I understand that there was a day when books were behind chains, or were they chained together? What was it?
When I entered for the first time to the library in Oxford, the very famous Bodleian library, I saw there chained books on the shelves. And I was troubled. Why to chain books? Will they escape?
Right.
And then I realized that actually the chained books were the revolution of their time, because until then they were blocked or locked in cases. And taking them out was the revolution of opening the data, although chaining it, because books were very expensive.
Well, it's a metaphor in a lot of ways. I mean, you think about Europe throughout the Middle Ages. In Christian Europe, there was, as I understand it, a view that reading was really for the clergy. And we're Jews, people of the book, so we see it differently, casting no criticisms. It's just a different approach.
And in the case, exactly, and in the case of the Holocaust, the challenge is even bigger because, as I already told you, the story is fragmented. And in order to tell it, you have to connect the dots. You have to collect everything, but also enable us and others, researchers, the public, to make the connections. And you may do it only by giving access to all of that freely.
So let's talk about your desire to create easy access, to allow all Holocaust archives to be literally online on the internet. That is a massive undertaking, probably expensive. Talk us through the costs.
First, about the need. I think that there are two main issues here.
Please.
One is that this is the marketplace today. This is where people do get information about everything. This is where youngsters are communicating with others. So this is where we want to be. This is where we want to be when we speak about documentation, about education. We are investing a lot in Yad Vashem there on the web. So we decided more than a decade ago that we would like to put everything that we have freely online, unless there is a legal restriction from the owners. So we actually established, I would call it a factory for scanning in Yad Vashem, and we are scanning millions of documents every year and gradually uploading them online. But this is not enough, because we asked also ourselves, what is the key? What is the way that usually people do have interest in what we have? And we realized that this is the people behind the documents that we have.
Right, the stories.
The stories and the life stories and the people that are commemorated by that. Mm-hmm. So we created a methodology, and we are using technology that enables us to find personal data in all the collections that we have. All of that is gathered in the central database of Holocaust victims' names, which is online since 2004. When we uploaded it in 2004, we had their information about around 2.7 million individuals, Jewish victims. Today we have their information about 4.7 million Jewish individuals, based on something like 10 million entries that we have there.
The question becomes, when you consider the Holocaust occurred in so many different languages, how does an easily accessible database become easily accessible? I descend from Polish Jews and Hungarian Jews. I'd love to research my relatives who've perished. I don't know how to spell the name in Polish and Hungarian, the transliteration.
This is one of the main challenges because we have documents in 60 languages.
Right.
And we have to create a team that knows to speak all those languages, and the technology and the methodology that knows to deal with that. So one of the ways to do it was to create very clever databases of keywords. For example, first names, last names, places, right. which have all the relevant variants of each one of the keywords.
Right, and the spelling, are you generous with the spellings? Meaning, if a letter's off, will we still be able to access it?
We have 1,025 options to write Avraham, for example, because you can write it in Polish, in Hebrew, in Yiddish, in Russian, in different fonts, letters, and you never know what was the way that the person who used it.
Exactly.
So you don't even, you don't have to know that, but behind the scenes, those tools are available to the public.
What about what some believe are privacy concerns? I mean, presumably most of the folks have died, but there's still survivors out there. Maybe they don't want their information available to the public.
Because we were one of the first ones to be brave enough to put right. those databases online more than a decade ago, we hesitated a lot then. But today, after a lot of years of operation, I may tell you that I can count on one hand cases where people demanded or asked us to take out information, which means that people do want it to be there.
Is this information relevant today? Are people researching about the Holocaust through the Yad Vashem website? I mean, my generation, sure, but do my kids research about the Holocaust?
I think that this is, for me, one of the most fascinating reasons to come to work every day, because in the reading room we have in the reading rooms at Yad Vashem, we have close to 10,000 visitors a year. Another 25,000 are applying by mail or email every year. But 19 million people used it online last year.
19 million.
19 million.
That's a huge number.
And it is growing every year dramatically, which means that it is relevant to people. And for youngsters especially, I think it is connected to the way that people do want to be connected to life, to people's life, to people's life stories, to the eyes of the other. When you are grappling, when you are encountering, when you are meeting with one person, the person that your family found when you visited Yad Vashem, This is how the next generation will be connected to the story.
When we come back, I want to ask you if you can kind of think about a story that was particularly touching for you, a story that maybe reconnected family, reconnected friends because of what was found in the archives. My name is Brad Pomerantz. We'll be right back. Okay, you don't want to miss the story that Dr. Gertner is about to tell. Don't touch that remote. Put it down. We're back. Now, before Dr. Gertner recounts how archival research was able to reconnect a son with the memory of his father, Dr. Gertner explains the honor known as Righteous Among Nations. Take a look. You're watching the J Report. I'm Brad Pomerantz. We are still joined by Dr. Haim Gertner. He is the director of the archives at Yad Vashem, which looks to collect documentation about the victims, but also about the heroes, the righteous among nations, the non-Jews that really put their lives at risk to save Jews during the Holocaust. Tell us about that.
Yad Vashem is a Jewish institution. Yad Vashem tells the story of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, from the Jewish perspective. This is the uniqueness of Yad Vashem. We do believe that we have to tell the story from all the perspectives, from the perspective of the victim as a human being, from the perspective of the perpetrator,
right,
but also from the perspective of the bystanders or those who tried not to be bystanders. I think the move from being a bystander into someone that reacted, that saved Jews, is one of the most important lessons for the generations to come. And this is why Yad Vashem decided, one of the reasons that why Yad Vashem decided to honor the righteous among the nations by awarding them this honorable medal and title.
And so the archives looks to collect documentation about the righteous.
So in Yad Vashem we have a special department which still operates today. People maybe think that it was ended, but it is still very, very actively operated. You don't have to be to award a righteous who is still alive. We can give it to the family members, and we do it every year. We add a few more hundreds righteous among the nations, and we honor them after their death.
Right. I only had one relative survive the Holocaust, and he survived because of someone who was arguably righteous. He was on Schindler's List. And so kind of that could be defining the epitome of someone who's righteous. Did Oskar Schindler, was he named a righteous among the nations?
Yes, he and his wife, Emily, was awarded. We have the Schindler, the original Schindler List.
He's number 624.
So it is.
He's 624.
It is saved and kept at the Yad Vashem archives.
It's touching. Think back to a moment in your work where you realized that because of the archival research you've done, you were able to reconnect someone, something to each other.
I have a lot of stories.
I know,
but I will
totally imagine.
I will share with you one of them, which happened, I think, a week after I came to the archives. And a person, his name was Moshe Bar Yehuda. He passed away a while ago. He came to me and he told me, I've heard that you brought an archive from a place that I think might be relevant to me, to Yad Vashem. I wrote an autobiography about myself, and I wrote that my father passed away in Majdanek, but I'm not sure that it was there. Can you assist me improving it?
Majdanek is a concentration camp in Poland.
Right. He remembered that his father was taken in just a few days before Passover, before Pesach, from Slovakia, where they lived. Why he remembered it? He was 8 years old. And he remembered that his father was taken in the middle of the day, in the middle of the street. From him, they were well dressed. This is why he is remembering the date. So this was the first clue. It assisted me and my staff to find a document from the same specific day. He was actually correct, documenting the capturing of his father on this specific day in Slovakia.
And was he sent to Majdanek?
We found in a collection that was recently then arrived to Yad Vashem a list from a specific week in Majdanek a list of the murdered people. They had it only for a few months. And in our collection, we had almost all of it, except of 1 week, that somehow we copied and found in another archive in Germany. We brought it into Yad Vashem, and in this list of this specific week, in September 42, we found the name of the father, Alfred Kastner. This was the name of the father. But then I saw that the date of the birth of the father was not correct, was not identical with the date that the son remembered. So I showed it to him. He said, no, it's not my father. It's the same name, but it's not my father. Then we found a third and last document from his mother, asking questions to all the archives all over the world in the 50s already. She wanted information about her late husband.
Because the mother survived.
The mother survived. She passed away, of course, decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
But she wrote the correct date that was written in the document that we found. So he told me he was very excited, and he told me, you brought me back my father twice. First, I know what was his correct date of birth. I didn't know.
Right.
And the second is that now I have a yahrzeit. Now I have a day of commemoration of my father. So for me, this was a remarkable moment, meeting a person that what we do for him matters.
What you do for all of world Jewry matters. The Holocaust is part of our history. It's a painful part of our history, and there's so much more about Judaism other than the Holocaust, but as we live today, it's an important part. And I just want to say thank you for keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive. I thank you on behalf of my daughters, my future grandchildren, and their descendants, because without Yad Vashem, without people like you, there would be no memory. It has been my honor to meet you. His name is Dr. Haim Gertner. He is the Director of Archives at Yad Vashem. I'm Brad Pomerantz. Thank you for joining us. Now, after I met Dr. Gertner, I was honored to be invited to Yad Vashem. And after that recent trip, I was able to include a small slice of that visit on a television program that I host for a PBS station, KVCR in Southern California. Here's that report. I was recently invited to participate in a media seminar at Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is Israel's Holocaust museum located in Jerusalem. The entire week was chock full of fascinating speakers. But the highlight, no surprise, was our visit inside Yad Vashem's archives. We met with the archives director, Dr. Haim Gertner. Here's Dr. Gertner showing us an actual registration card of a Jewish prisoner at the Mauthausen concentration camp, where close to 100,000 people were murdered. And here I am next to the original architectural map of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the Nazis' largest concentration camp where they killed over 1 million European Jews. But the most chilling moment inside the Yad Vashem archives was presented by Sarah Shore, who specializes in Holocaust artifacts. Here is Sarah showing us a painting of a Nazi soldier during World War II. Interesting. But then, she turned the painting around, and what did she reveal? The artist painted on the backside of a Torah, or a Jewish Bible. Needless to say, there was an audible gasp inside the archive when we realized that the Nazis actually desecrated this Torah by painting, of all things, a Nazi soldier on this holy parchment. So whether you're halfway around the world or at your local museum, you never know what might be uncovered in the archives. For Uncovered in the Archives Extra, I'm Brad Pomerantz. On the other side, we visit the location of a more recent genocide, South Sudan. Stay close. We're back on the J Report. Now, the people of South Sudan have faced genocidal violence for decades. Nevertheless, efforts continue to create normalcy in a region that is too often fractured by murderous attacks. Our friends at UN in Action take a look at one such program.
At first, I thought I was just to come here to pass my time, but I realized this my dream might be. So, doing a lot of baking. With the new instructors coming, I gain more experience and a lot of information on how to bake. I don't like cooking that much, but lately when I cooked and most of my customers, they said, what you are cooking is so tasteful. It made me more excited, and I will even be proud to tell them that I'm the one doing it. So that made me happy, and I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing.
사실 이제 제빵을 많이 접해보지 못한 학생들이기 때문에 수업 전에 굉장히 걱정을 많이 했었는데 생각보다 이제 의지도 되게 확고하고 따라오는 속도가 생각보다 더 되게 좋다고.
We are so happy that most of the men are coming to our class now, and in our traditions, it is against our culture for a man to cook, but now they're changing. Like now we have one guy with us, two actually. So, and also it's bring unity, because we have different people from different states, and especially some are from POC and the one from Botown. So it's kind of unity. We try to learn from each other.
Asin nin baga mazarayin gani zara jad wasa gadin yanja nin ma zai zama gadin fi balad asel kurin amulen aja kwes isa Sudan as mind of development lamma ase amulen training jayin fi farmers kulen zeda namul development le sa Sudan chance Sudan kun po kulen yezol imchi amul zara bitaw fi balad bitaw fi county bitaw fi yam bitaw chanjuno the during bital belet yamul development.
Okay, that's all for this edition of the J Report. For the entire J Report team, I'm Brad Pomerantz. Thanks for watching.